within the gender-based violence space, this is what we've achieved. And what do I mean by that? For example, we could look at the legal framework, for example, and say, how established and how strong is the Sexual Offences Act or the Child Protection Act? Do we need to enhance it? And now you look at the support side on supporting women who have survived GBV or who are victims of GBV, and if not just women, men as well. How is the structure from onset, from identifying this is a victim of GBV, to reporting, to bringing these people to justice, and to, at the end of the day, making them safe from there here on out? And what does it mean in between there? It means probably having free access to free medical care, access to free judicial systems, like I said, free lawyers and what have you. That is what needs to be happening in the legislative space, because as at right now, I can see a lot of talks about, just awareness. So we are championing against GBV, but on the ground, what is really happening? And even at the very end, most of these women, after enduring being survivors of GBV, you find that probably the man was the source of the breadwinner, the source of money in the household. What are you doing to make these women now stable economically, such that they can support their women? Those are the kind of talks you need to be having from here on out, not just awareness. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Let's talk about funding, Diana, because you are the director of Fund Service Management under the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. In terms of fund, we saw President William Ruto promising to set aside 100 million shillings to help in the fight against femicide in the country and tackle issues arising from femicide. Apart from that, do we have funds under the National Government Affirmative Action Fund that set aside to deal with such cases? And if so, from where you sit, are they enough?
Not at all, but first I would like to echo what Wanjiru was saying. Are we doing only awareness during this time? And there's a lot of awareness that we are doing. But I would like to tell you that at the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, we are actually collecting opinions on what key areas we can be able to transform the fight against gender-based violence. And that one, guys can actually go to www.ngaf.go.ke, get involved, share your opinion, because we do not want these 16 days, and especially with the highest numbers of femicide within the last 3 months, to go and we finish the 16 days when we have not collected opinion. We've just said enough is enough. We want to say enough is enough, but be able to have a way forward. And that is why on the 10th of December, actually, the Meru Women Rep, Honorable Kailemia, is having an event on Human Rights Day. And on that day, we will collect the resolution or the opinions from the athletic community and pass the baton onto the government officials to be able to now begin working on the recommendations and the things that we found out from our collection from the athletic community and also from the youth. And therefore we are calling on everyone this period, this year, let us not just go and say GBV and let it be awareness only. Okay. Let us be able to share our opinions. We are a very knowledgeable nation. What can we do to be able to end GBV? And coming back to the question of funding, funding is not enough. And it is actually, what can I say? We need to actually put the fund in the medium-term plan 4, in this current medium-term plan that we are working on. We set out to, the plan was to have a survivors fund, and that is still in plan to actually set up a survivors fund. What NGAF has done, currently the fund that we have, the women reps can be able to go get a county-wide project where they can build shelters. And that is what has been going to that. But what we have done further is we have partnered with donors to be able to start now setting up particular funds, a particular fund that really addresses access to services, where we update the directory where guys can actually get the services. But we also we have a component for social economic transformation, where we are taking survivors through the training, where they can have now they can be able to be self-sustainable, to be empowered. And through this program, after the program, they can get a very small grant. And I call it very small because this is just a kickstart grant. And we partner now with banks, with financial institutions, so that when we kickstart you, you now understand that you're in a commercial environment. And you now work with the commercial institutions, because the grant cannot help grow your business to the level of where you want to see yourself very self-sustainable. So that is what we have done. In my understanding, the 100 million that the president gave was actually towards the awareness that we are having, towards this campaign for the 16 days. And that 100 million, if you divide it across the country, even if it's per county, it's a segmentation of around 2 million and a couple of shillings on top for someone to run an awareness campaign per county. It's still very little for you to even run an awareness. Now, what about a program that we need to be able to work around? And that is what NGAF is championing for. How do we have or ensure that the Survivors Fund, from awareness to the actual programmatic interventions from a community level, that we have actually put that into place. 100 million is a drop in the ocean. A drop in the ocean.
Now, before I engage on Jiro, let me ask you, because you've talked about how you help victims of gender-based violence and probably femicide to get back to their feet.
Yes.
Now, that is one aspect in trying to ensure that they are independent in a way.
Yes.
But in terms of ensuring they are safe thereafter, what is being done? Because that is also a very key concern.
Now, in terms of ensuring that they are safe, number one, that is where, when you look at GBV, it has several actors. In terms of ensuring they are safe, yes, we have built safe houses, and we have a couple of government safe houses, but then you find that the legal and the police, the Ministry of Interior, that comes in as a component that needs to ensure the safety. So you find that in addressing the issue of GBV, it's actually multi-sectorial, where I can give you the mechanism to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. But then the Ministry of Interior and Security now comes in to ensure that my security and my well-being is actually assured. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. It's worth noting that I wish we had one Miss Harriet Shigai here, because she's the presidential advisor on women's rights. We did extend an invitation, but she was engaged in other activities. If she was here, she'd probably expound more on what they've done, she has done in trying to ensure that the government prioritizes cases of gender-based violence. But let me come to you, Anjiro. There's the issue of social media. And they say cases of gender-based violence has really advanced on social media. Now, how do we tackle that? Because you'll find people, someone seated just in their homes or somewhere behind the keyboard, doing whatever they do, using the platform to whether spew hate or whatever. But how do we deal with cases of gender-based violence advancing through social media?
Well, first of all, cyberbullying is horrible. It's a cancer that's growing and is going to affect our children more than it's affecting us, and it's horrid. And especially when it comes to gender-based violence, my thinking is that the root of all this especially comes from men thinking that gender-based violence is their fault. It's as if it's a fight of men against women, which is not the case. I mean, if, for example, let me put it into perspective, right? If it was a campaign against people who steal, and maybe you find that people who steal are mostly men, the thieves in CBD are mostly men. It's not that men will come out and say, no, even women steal, such a thing. It should be, yeah, I know men steal, but let's all come together and say that let's fight these people who actually steal from us, because even men are also victims of robbery and robbery violence, like such a case. So I feel in the social media, first of all, there's a deep-rooted notion, and it's a misnomer, that that it's a men against women pivoting thing. For example, even just going back to the recent case that we've had, I think you've seen CCTV footage has come up on the Elias versus Florence story.
Yes.
And whatever the men are saying in Twitter is very sickening. It's like, you know, these women, they would say anything, you know, and I'm just like, well, you know, first of all, the investigations are going on, and it's clear that the woman is still the one in the hospital without fingers, with cuts, you know, she's bleeding, and the man is okay, has gone scot-free, and is out on bail. It's not Daughters of Jezebel versus Sons of Adam thing. It's a Elias versus Florence. What did Elias do to Florence? And that is what is causing a lot of misinformation and abuse on social media, on cyberbullying. That is the deep-rooted cause. What can be done now, here is where we can use the awareness thing. We just make sure that people in GAF, people like me who are gender activists, just continue telling people that this is not, and we've told them time and time again, it's just, but then you continue knocking down that information that it's not that we are saying all of you men are bad or anything. But please remember that when women are out there and they are walking at night, they are scared. They're always scared. You see, there's a woman you said who sleeps with knives under her bed, fighting the notion of the person that she loves most might come after her. Okay. It's not a men versus women thing. It's a men who fight women or women who fight men, men who sex traffic, women who abuse children, religions. By the way, that's another topic, but religions that are abusive to certain genders. It's a whole topic of a lot of things. And that's how we tackle cyberbullying. Just make sure we drive the force that it's not a gender war. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, before I engage Viridiana, because when we talk about gender-based violence, I know we've spent much time talking about femicide, but there are also cases of, you know, men who are affected by gender-based violence. But
Absolutely.
There seems to be no proper mechanism to deal with that. We've seen, like you've talked about, the funds within GAF, there are certain you know, mechanisms that are aimed at helping women who are victims of gender-based violence. But where are men in all this?
Yeah, and it's, yeah, for sure. When it comes to, and I say even I'm a gender activist, I don't mean that I'm just fighting for women, or there's also men. Men is a gender, cisgender men, cisgender women, transgender men, non-binary, all those are genders. So, and all those have different things that are affecting them. And that's the thing. It's just that the heightened cases, 90% of the time that are affected by violence is men acting upon women. Right now, for the men's side, when it comes to the violence, is not as prevalent as the women's. That's why the women's cases are so loud, especially right now with the UN and WHO fighting against the gender-based violence in Ukraine and in certain Arab countries. It's really, really terrible when you look at it from a global perspective. When you come down to Kenya, and even in generally, just say generally, men biologically are physically stronger than women, right? So men biologically, if it was a man attacking a woman, it would be more severe than if it was a woman attacking a man. That's why it would be a woman. Let me put this into perspective. A woman in a women's prison with women guards would feel safer than a woman in CBD with no guards at night. But that woman would feel safer than a man in a man's prison with men guards. Because men are generally just physically strong, and men are even afraid of their own men. We had a very sorry case in Mombasa of a man who was sodomized just the other day, and that's it's so sad. But if it was a group of, let's say, 2-3 women attacking the same man, it would have been easy for this man to ward off this woman than it would have been for the man to ward off this other men. But we're not saying at the same time, when it comes to gender-based violence, that men are not victims. It's just that because the prevalence is against women, this is what you'd hear so much on the social media than the prevalence that it is against men. But even when I know it comes to the funding, and Ridiana will just probably agree or tell me if this is true, it's not funds you're saying that these funds are just for women, or these judicial systems, these courts are just for women. It's a system and it's funding for everybody.
Well, fair enough. You want to add something on that?
Yes, I would like to add something on that, and especially when it comes to social media and all. One of the things that we did, during this period, we also set up a chatbot. And that chatbot, it's just for you to speak out wherever you are. And we tried to find out And the people who are speaking out, you find it's 50-50, male and female. But then you find the perpetrators, the gender of perpetrators, mostly because we just highlighted a question, who is the gender of the perpetrator? You find it's mostly men. So in this aspect of this whole process, it's not that we are not listening to the men. It's not that we are not coming out. And I would also like to highlight some of the male champions. Like when we began this process, the president of Athletics Kenya, retired General Tuwei, actually is the one who picked the phone and called and said, we need to walk this journey. So you find men who are standing out. My boss is a man, Royce Sakatelewa. They stood out and they said, we are going to fight this war. And it's not about like what I saw, maybe like what I saw Sonko coming out and posting and saying, look, is the man, this man, and you realize it was as if you're pitting man versus woman against each other. And when leaders do that, where you're pitting the woman against the man, it now doesn't become responsible for us. So you look at that, and as she's saying, it is not a war, a man against a woman, but it's actually for us to say, there's a problem. People are being killed. Let us solve this problem of people being killed. There's a problem. A woman is lying in a hospital with bandages, cut all over. There's a problem. There's a problem when a woman, when a man has been attacked and he's wounded. There's a problem. There's someone who attacked that man. There's someone who has attacked this woman. So that problem is what we are trying to solve. We are not trying to have a war between a man and a woman. Yeah. Okay,
fair enough. I just wanted to, before I go back to Njuru, engage you with Diana, because the deputy DCI boss, that is one John Onyango, who's the former director in charge of Crime Research and Intelligence Bureau, said in a parliamentary session that I attended that, well, you know, talking about matters extrajudicial killings, there are very many other cases of, you know, men being murdered. It's only that they don't get the much attention as compared to, cases of femicide. But at the end of the day, how do we get to deal with all these issues? Because according to statistics, 60% of, all homicide cases, they are committed by intimate partners. Yeah. So how do we deal with all this mess of, homicide, femicide, just gender-based violence generally?
And I would like to say, I don't think also the media would have just gone to only cases where women are killed and pick that information, or other agencies would have gone and just picked only the cases where women are killed. When they go to a particular, when you're highlighting a particular case, irrespective of whether it's a woman or a man, you highlight the case as you see it. Okay. So whatever the, and I would like to urge that indeed whatever is being seen is a lot of women being killed, mercilessly. But in addition to that, we need to be able to now move forward and say, how do we work with each other? Which is the same conversation that, as you said, the president stood and said, we need to push safe home, safe spaces. It is, this problem is within us. This problem is you and I. This problem is a man at home. Yes. The statistics say that women, or most of the gender-based violence, happens in homes. Okay. So our values and principles, how are we living with each other? That is the biggest question. And I have said the amount of violence that is even experienced within the social media in Kenya is a lot of violence. The way we abuse each other, the way we throw words to each other is really bad. That's why even other nations, when they say, if you go challenge Kenya on Twitter you will, or on X, you will not win. Okay. But that is not a good index for Kenya. Kenya needs to be able to ensure that our character is now changing. Our values and principles are changing.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Because of time, I just want to give you at least a few seconds to each of you to just give me your final views in terms of what next. Because there's the issue of AGM that you also talked about, and they say 27% is the prevalence rate of FGM here in the country. Now, she has talked about the issue of values and principles. How do we deal with the probably long-standing cultural beliefs, like we said, of men disciplining women, and that amounts to cases of just gender-based violence as well. Now, there's a concern regarding we need to have proper mechanisms in terms of formally having the numbers within hospitals, within police stations of cases of gender-based violence, to be able to find a way, formulating ways for proper planning to ensure that we deal with these particular issues. So, what next, and how do we deal with how do we come up with better policies? Wanjiro, starting with you.
This is my what next strategy. First of all, the awareness is good. Spread awareness everywhere, absolutely. And let's remove these two notions that I think are a cancer now to the fight against GBV. Number one, that it's a gender war. And number two, the vumilia aspect that African women actually have. And that's why we have such worrying cases in Rwanda, saying that you can beat me if I don't cook well. I mean, that's insane. That's absolutely
We've seen
insane.
cases of that even in Meru County, where the patriarchal issues.
Exactly, in Migori, in Kuria County, it's in the Kuria community. I mean, it's worrying. We have to remove that vumilia strategy that men are just like that. You tell your daughter, men are just like that. If he beats you, just forgive him. Don't leave your marriage or what. Don't report. Let's continue advising our women to report these cases and to make sure that you are not alone, so that we can also be there for them emotionally as well as we are for them legally and physically. And my parting shot would be, anytime, and I don't know which is my camera, but I think it's this one.
Yes, it is.
I'd like to tell all men and women that every time you just look at the centermost part of your body, there's a certain hole, and that hole or a mark is a mark where you were once connected to a woman. For 9 months, you were connected to a woman and you breathed and ate through that mark for a whole 9 months. Anytime you remember that you ever breathe underwater is through that hole. So every time you want to strike a woman or to abuse a woman violently, even through cyber, remember, just look at yourself at the centermost part of your body that you are once connected to this very person that you want to hurt.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank
20
you.
seconds, kindly. 20 seconds.
20 seconds. Our call to action, get involved. Get to www.ngaf.go.ke, share your opinion on how we can solve these matters. Get on to WhatsApp 0701 116 116. Speak up. Let us solve this together. Let's, as collectively, Kenya, let us end GBV.
Thank you very much, Viridiana Osike, the Director's Fund Services Management within the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, for making time. Josephine Wanjiro, thank you very much for making time, an insightful conversation. I wish we had more time because there are very many other issues to tackle. But that is all that we had for you at this particular moment in time. And to be specific, here on New Dawn, Remy Majala will be coming to you in a moment with a morning vibe, even as we get to the second day of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, not only in the country, but as well across the globe. Thank you very much for making time. You have yourself a wonderful day. And like always, God bless.
Get your camera, take a snap. Shorty been eyeing me, she probably think I'm a snack. Could it be that guap? I'm young, rich, and I'm